Hello everyone, welcome to Farming Simulator 15 in this beautiful map created by Wild Wes called Gelvin Valley. We are on a steep section of the field trying to navigate down here. I was thinking I could use this exit point, and I don't know if I'll be able to. I need to back up here. Well, I'm trying not to smash crop. Will hopefully not do too much damage. You know, I'll probably get a couple wheel treads through there. Oh, maybe not. Maybe the trailers don't make a mark. Don't often come through this stretch of road here. Don't really have a reason to, but we have a full load of canola from our latest harvesting, so I'm going to take it to the bin. Slowly filling it up, and I got the combine sitting in the field. Probably should have turned it loose at the hired help, but I'm kind of running low on bread, as everyone can see, so I think I will drive it myself once I get back to the field. It's a Wednesday evening here as I record this. It's a little bit rainy outside, getting the summer rain. Don't get those very often here. So it's a good time to record. Put in about 12 hours of work today. It was a long day, so it feels kind of good to do a little farm simming. Actually, today while I was working, you know, for me, I realize not everybody can do this. I have a desk job, so I'm sitting on my backside most of the day, of course. But it's just so helpful to have good things to listen to during the day, and I enjoy listening to other people's farming sim videos. So couple that I listened to today were from my friend Russell and Fury Machine Gaming. You can definitely go check out their channels. They are very good if you enjoy mature talk. Mature, whatever that means. We're for sure mature, us men playing on this game, right? And the topic I wanted to visit about today is something that is, and I don't know when this episode will play, so probably by the time the episode is public, because I got a stack of them kind of ahead of this, people will probably have already long forgotten about it, but it's in the news, at least here in America. There was a concert, and I don't know who the group is. I'd never heard of them. You know, I've never been to a music concert in my life, and so I don't know much about that kind of thing. But anyway, some people, lots of them, went to this group, and I guess what they will sometimes do at a concert, maybe they do this in a sports stadium too. A lot of times couples will go there together to enjoy the evening or whatever. Well, they got this camera, and it will pan through the crowd, search whatever, to see if there's activity, I guess, or maybe people in love. I don't know. Maybe they catch people hugging, smooching, whatever. Get me through the gate. Oh, no. Hopefully don't take it out the corner. Maybe it's probably a terrible place to park it because it's maybe not so bad. Alright, off to the combine. Crank her up. Here we go. So anyways, probably those of you listening have been to concerts, and I'm the only sheltered one here that hasn't. Anyway, there's these cameras looking for people doing whatever. And I guess this happened at this particular concert. And I'm not even going to try to name the group. I don't want to name the people. It's all over the news. So, whoa, Nelly. Yeah, that's a little steep right there. But there was at this concert a couple, so-called, and the only problem is this particular couple was married to other people, and he was the CEO of a company, a fairly substantial company, I might add, and she was a subordinate. Not just any subordinate. She was the head of the AR or HR department, Human Resources. And so this camera is going around, and they find this particular couple, and I think he's hugging her, kind of holding her from behind or whatever, while they're both standing watching the concert or whatever. Well, this camera that they have projects whatever it sees. There's a huge screen, I don't know what they call that, jumbotron, projects it onto a screen, and everybody in the whole stadium can see it. And so this particular couple, when they notice themselves up on the screen, the lady standing in front, you see her immediately frown, and I think she covers her face or covers her mouth, just kind of a shock, surprise, like, oh no. And then she goes off camera, maybe ducks. The male part also sees it, and he ducks down behind some benches or whatever, wherever they were sitting, standing, whatever. And what are the odds of something like that happening? Who knows? But that obviously isn't what they were expecting. It isn't what they wanted the public to see. And yet, there they were out in public for the whole world to see. And they tried to hide from the camera. And the musician, again, I don't know who this group is, but he commented on there. I think he tried to address them, hello, and then he just quipped, well, they're either shy or they're having an affair. Well, little did he realize, the latter was basically true. And so, yeah, this couple basically got caught in their affair. And like I say, he is married, she is married. I think they both maybe have children, and for a night out in public, they essentially wrecked whatever home life they had, with their true spouse. And it's just interesting, when someone gets in trouble in public, like happens here, it's amazing the reaction of people. At least to most normal people, what I would say, they would observe the ad and say the ad is wrong. They're doing something wrong. Of course, they would try to hide it. They don't want anybody to see them. And then the next thing is everybody starts dumping on them. Well, how could they? How could he do that to his wife? How could she do that to her husband or kids, whatever? And then they start looking at the responsibilities of these particular people. He's the CEO, she's a subordinate. There were people speculating that she's probably gotten people in trouble for doing exactly what she was caught doing. And rightfully so. I mean, I'm not trying to defend anything these two people did. I'm just observing the reaction that people have, when someone does something wrong or that society deems bad, it seems like it becomes an open season on the people that did it, and everybody throws rocks at them and denigrates their behavior. They say what they say, and you know what? It isn't untrue. It is wrong. But here's the thing. According to statistics, there's a whole lot more people out there doing the very same thing, maybe that aren't caught or don't have their indiscretion made public. And you wonder, are the people who have done it before or are currently doing it, are those among the same people wagging their finger or, basically calling them out in public and ragging on them? There's something in the human psyche, I don't know what it is, but when we see someone who has done something wrong, it's this righteous indignation or whatever you call it that wells up inside, and we just want to condemn them. And I don't know why that is. I've wondered before if most people on the planet that have ever lived, do we understand, and most of us maybe will say, well, I'm not perfect, or I make mistakes, and we know that that's inherently true. Nobody is perfect. But when we see someone else who is not perfect and their indiscretion is public, do we somehow feel better about ourselves when we call it out, when we shake our head at them, wag a finger, whatever? I don't know. Oops. Here I just go run over the crop again. I've just wondered about this particular dynamic, and it's just really curious to me. And I've wondered, well, how many times, have I done that? And probably where it really comes to bear is, if this man is the CEO of a company, or he was, I think he resigned or he was fired, and I think ditto for her. I don't know that either of them are employed there any longer. But if he is responsible, as leaders would be, for setting the tone at the top, on what ethical behavior is, and ditto with her, if she is responsible for administering the human resources of a company and trying to make sure people behave ethically, that there aren't problems, that crop up, create issues for the company, that's her job. And so these people, both of them, probably have preached, to use a coin a phrase, if you will, they've probably preached it to their people on what to do, what not to do. And so when those people, having heard this, look at their behavior, they say, well, you're a hypocrite. And I have never met anybody who appreciates a hypocrite. Although, interestingly enough, I think I studied this one time. If you look at the word acting, for Hollywood or plays or whatever, I don't know if it's the Greek word that underlies it or just what it is, but its root is the same word or similar word to hypocrisy. Only in acting, of course, we all know it's fake, or so we think, and so we find that kind of hypocrisy acceptable. But when it's real life, nobody likes a hypocrite. And maybe that's where the righteous indignation comes from, well, you say this, but you do that, the very opposite that you tell me how to behave, especially, for a person that's in a position of power or that has authority to hire, fire, those kinds of things. It's particularly difficult to overlook an indiscretion, when the rich and powerful do it, because they have a tendency to preach to us little people. Well, even though we know, us little people, that the big people aren't perfect either, we have a tendency to be less forgiving, when they fail. But like I say, I don't know. I observed this. I observed my own reaction to it. I mean, I basically had the same reaction as everyone else. And then, like I say, I had to stop myself. And it's, why is it so easy to pour out on someone, when they do something wrong? I think I've mentioned before that I'm a Christian, and in the Bible, there's a story of, it was a woman caught in adultery. And there maybe could be a whole episode on this. But I think it was the Pharisees, they were religious rulers in this case of the people. They brought this woman who they caught in the very act, they said, of, committing adultery. And they brought her to Jesus and said, the law says she should be stoned. Well, what do you say? Well, then as the story went, Jesus was writing on the ground at the time. And the Bible doesn't say what he was writing, but he asked them a question, or he sent out, he made a statement. He said, those of you that are without sin, you can throw stones at her. And as the account reads, one by one, starting at the oldest, they all left because they realized none of them were perfect and they had no right to throw a rock at the woman. But just like then, as now, it is so easy to do. It's kind of like if we're in traffic, and all of us, I would venture to say, we've probably all sped at one time or another and gone above what the posted speed limit is. But if we're not in a hurry in a particular day and we notice someone else who is maybe weaving in and out of traffic, we get annoyed. We say, what a doofus. What's his problem? Why is he in such a hurry? Maybe we honk our horn at him or her, and we get all irritated. When the day before or the day following, it's us that are in a hurry and we're speeding, and we somehow think it's different, when we're doing it versus when the other guy is doing it. I heard a pastor say one time, I thought this was a very interesting observation. He said, we many times judge others by their actions, whereas we judge ourselves by our intentions. Who knows what was going on in that person's life that was speeding? Maybe his child was sick and he needed to be at home. Who knows? There's maybe all sorts of reasons, but it's, for whatever the reason, it's very difficult for any of us to give grace to others when they transgress, particularly if they've ever preached to others about good behavior or whatever. And as a Christian, I know it's very common for those who aren't, or as we would say, the world, to call out the hypocrisies of Christians. And you know what? Just like this one couple was caught in bad behavior, just like the woman that was dragged in front of Jesus, just like the Christian that someone may encounter and find, you can easily find bad behavior, or behavior that isn't perfect, behavior that doesn't conform to a standard, and it's easy to shake the finger and call it out and say, shame on you, you're a hypocrite, how dare you. And we've all probably done that to someone at some point, and it doesn't make any of those infractions any less serious or not real. We can't excuse it. Christians can't either. And that's where, here's my theory. I think even the world, those who are non-Christian, it all depends on a reaction and the person's attitude, probably like with so many things. My theory is there should be a difference in how the Christian deals with his wrongs. And when he's called out on it, if it's true, then there's a difference. He doesn't excuse it or try to bluff his way out of it. Oop, already full again. He's instead going to own it and repent. To me, that is what separates the Christian from people in the so-called world. Is, Christians aren't any more perfect than anybody else. But the difference is they deal with their sin differently, if I can put it that way. At least I would hope so. And like I say, my theory is that even the world would respect that, but when they hear Christians or, those who have, quote, religion, preaching at them and telling them all the bad things that they do and never acknowledge their own, it just, that doesn't compute. And I think the world would be a little more forgiving or understanding of a Christian if they simply owned their own sin and their own guilt when it happened. Because I think even the world understands nobody is perfect, and they wouldn't expect necessarily other people to be that. But I don't know. That's my theory. Maybe someone else would say something different. But again, I just observe how easy it is for any of us, I don't care who we are, when we see wrong, to have righteous indignation, even though we should understand that we ourselves aren't perfect either. And we may say, well, yeah, but there are bad things, and then there are really bad things. I'm not perfect, but at least, I'm not a murderer. I didn't do the bad thing, that other person did over there. And, okay, well, I'm not the judge or the arbiter of all that. Someday, we'll tell it to God. That's my belief. And he knows about it already. It's up to him. It's up to what's in his word. But for any of us to just excuse ourselves, I don't know. The older I get, the less I feel I can just do that, and the more I realize how dependent I am on Jesus Christ, for his covering for my sin, and just to sustain me day by day, because if he doesn't help me and if I don't depend on him, then I am no different than anybody else, and I will fail. It's as sure as the sun coming up in the morning. So for these two people, I'm sure, like I say, people listening to this probably have heard it on the news. And what's your theory on it? Does it seem that way? Is it righteous indignation, or are we just bored as a populace? Do we have too much leisure time on our hands to where we're not busy enough that when a juicy story comes along like this, even though we don't know the people from Adam, it just tickles our ears, makes us feel good because, hey, we had a good day, I didn't cheat on my spouse, how dare this person do that? Are we just bored, or what is it? I think also as a Christian too, maybe where some of this comes from is we believe that each person on the planet was created in the image of God. There's a part of us that is a reflection of, in some small way, of the divine. Now, we aren't divine, most assuredly not, but we do things that in some ways God does. For example, we believe God created the world. Well, look at all the things mankind has created. All these machines and inventions. That, in my humble opinion, is a reflection of a creator God. So that's kind of what I mean. So another area where we could be reflecting him is when we do notice error or bad things, and that, again, not to overuse the phrase, that righteous indignation rises up in us and we say, how dare they? Just like sin is an affront to a holy God. So maybe it's that. Maybe it isn't boredom. I really don't know what it is. Again, I was just observing all of our collective behavior. So then, kind of leaving off that, I thought I'd maybe heard, although you never know what you can trust on the internet. Okay, so if you're a singer, and, this was intended for fun, that they would do this at a concert, run the camera around, see who's out there canoodling, whatever you call it. Are you gonna ever do that again? Here you just outed somebody in their affair. I almost think I saw on the internet there was someone thinking of suing the musician for doing the ad, or maybe the concert venue. But that's kind of like a thief suing the homeowner when the thief breaks in to steal something and trips over, a chair and breaks their leg. They would, as if they would sue the homeowner. And I'm sure some have probably tried. But the idea just sounds ridiculous, of course. So who knows if that angle would be tried. But I don't know, maybe the musician would be a little bit worried, depending on what kind of powerful person they happen to catch just by random, that maybe something could happen to them, if they do it to the wrong person. Does it kind of wreck the fun? If you're a couple engaging in bad behavior, maybe something like that happening would make you think twice before doing it. I really don't know. But maybe another question is, and I know in free countries, Western society, if you will, there's the concept of privacy. And how much privacy is a person entitled to? There are all sorts of things that we are private about. And I don't need to list them all out. We all know what those are. And not all of them. It isn't that privacy is needed for doing nefarious things. It could be for good things. If, for a while I was treasurer of my church. And one of the things I had to do was collect the money each Sunday that was put in the offerings. And I would keep a record, for tax purposes, for whoever contributed, because I had to give them a receipt from the church, at the end of the year, so they could deduct contributions legally on their tax form or whatever. So, and those were details that I never told anyone. People wanted to be able to give, which is a good thing, in private, knowing that those details, wouldn't be shared with anybody else. So there's lots of good things that happen in private, and unfortunately, there's also a lot of bad things, that people do in private, and that's why they want to do it in private. They don't want people to know what they're doing because they know, it maybe is a wrong behavior they're engaging in, and people would condemn it, or that they would even get in trouble, if people found out. Alright, let me take this off the hill, head on down. We are making progress in this field. Quite a lot of progress, actually. Well, I don't think we'll quite get it done this recording. So at some level, we all have an expectation of a certain level of privacy. And I have a feeling that we all have way less privacy than what we really think we do. You know, we carry these things called phones around with us everywhere we go, and those things listen to us. Shoot, I got one sitting right beside me as I record this. And if I so much as utter the name that we all know of these devices and ask her to do something for me, to look something up, she'll do it. So that tells me she's constantly listening. Who else is listening? You know, I think we've all had the experience where we're talking about something with our friends, and then the next thing we know, we see an ad on our phone that is for the very things we were just talking with our friends about. So it's, you know, and the companies will say, no, they're not listening. Well, whatever. I think probably at a certain level they are. You know, what about your internet browser history? You know, do we expect the ad to be private? You know, if we do it on a company computer, how do we know someone isn't looking at it? And, you know, should we rightly expect that the ad is something that would be kept private? Or if it's to our home? And why would we care if it's private or not? You know, if we're looking up wholesome things, why would we care? You know, so much, you know, when it comes to the internet browser history, we probably care because we don't want someone to see all those bad things we're looking at when we say or hold ourselves out that we're someone else in public. So I don't know. There's some things for a lot of us that are private, and then for this couple, you know, that was kind of caught in the stadium, it is not private. And it's just interesting. You know, I'll just mention one more thing from the Bible. There's a verse in there that says some ends are open beforehand, and some go with him into judgment. And I've always wondered if maybe a meaning to that is, you know, some people have their sin revealed or known before they die, like this couple here just had done. They were outed, and others, they carry it in secret, and eventually they go into judgment before God. So, yeah. I don't know. I just have been thinking about this particular couple and, you know, what happened here. And I'm sure right now, having both lost their jobs, their marriage now in shambles, they're facing some hard things. And I certainly don't envy them. Nor do I exactly wish them well. You know, that's a terrible thing to do, to cheat on your spouse. And it's just, yeah. It's a yucky, icky thing. So, but what do you all think about why people pile on when people are caught in error, or someone's expectation of privacy? Thank you so much for coming along, listening to my silly musings here this evening. Hope you all are having a wonderful day. Hope you aren't having to harvest canola. Y'all have a great day. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.